Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am going to be talking about Frostgrave. So Frostgrave is a fantasy skirmish war game. That's right off the cover, actually the back cover. And it is a really, really fascinating game, right? So the way I came across it was for a long time, I have been trying to get into Warhammer 40K. And that has been a long, unproductive road. But because I've played some pretty lame games of Warhammer 40K, primarily because I am coming at the hobby from kind of an unusual angle. That mostly that's on me, I would say. And also I'm trying to play Warhammer 40K in an economical fashion, and maybe that's been the foolish part, right? So, but because I'm interested in Warhammer 40K and trying to get into the hobby, trying to find a path into Warhammer 40K gaming, I go into local gaming shops and I'll look at the Warhammer stuff, right? And so when you go along the Warhammer wall, you will see Warhammer, and then you will see War Machine and Hordes, right? And those are the two big ones right now. Those are the two big fantasy war games, right? You'll see a lot of other stuff. You'll see Bolt Action, and that's another one. Another area in the war games world is these World War II tank games. Another big miniatures game, right? And you'll see a few other unusual games in there. Malifaux is a French fantasy war game, right? All of these games are very interesting. They all have their own community. They all center around buying miniatures, painting those miniatures, and then playing battles with those miniatures, right? Usually at the shops where you buy them. So I came across this game on the wall at my friendly local gaming shop. Actually, I would say it's a local gaming shop. It's interesting. So I came across this game there, and maybe it's on the line between FLGS and an LGS. So I came across this game there, and it was Frostgrave. And there was this tiny, tiny little section. The section for Frostgrave was 1/4 of the size of a single faction for Warhammer 40K, right? So if you took just the Tau, this would be 1/4 of just that section. So it's just 1 or 2 shelves with about 4 or 5 books on it, and no more than 10 to 20 individual boxes with some miniatures on them, right? And so I saw this, I thought, that's weird. Why is that even here, right? And I've never seen it before, and it seems odd, right? So I didn't think anything of it. I left the shop. And what I bought that day was I actually bought some comic books. Right? Didn't think anything of it. And so then I was on YouTube, and I saw a review from a board game YouTube channel for Frostgrave. And so I hit play on this half an hour review for Frostgrave, and this board gamer just gushed over Frostgrave and just like, this is the best game in the world, oh my goodness, just like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And I thought, wow, that's weird, right? Because board gamers generally, the wargaming area is not their milieu. They don't get that excited about it. And I was like, that's really strange. I wonder what's going on here, right? Well, at the end of his review, he said, this game is 25. The rule book for this game is all you need, right? He said, this game allows you to use any miniatures you want. So if you have any size miniature collection of fantasy miniatures, you can start playing this game immediately. All you need to do is buy the book, right? Which the book is $25. And my ears perked up. I was like, what? Right? Here, now, why do my ears perk up at a $25 book, right? Here's why, right? This is bonkers. Like, just listen to this, right? Here's my road to Warhammer. 2 years ago, I bought a $50 used book that was the rule book for Warhammer. It was out of date 2 months after I bought it, right? The new Warhammer rule book is $80, right? It is 3 times the cost of Frostgrave, and you don't even own a single miniature, right? There are a huge number of single miniatures, just one character in Warhammer, that will cost you more than the entire rulebook for Frostgrave. So, Frostgrave is to the wargaming, to miniature wargaming, what Uber is to taxis. It is a really, really unusual, exciting game because of what it is. It is an incredibly low barrier to market game where it says, hey, here's some cool rules for a fantasy skirmish war game. Get whatever miniatures you want. You're going to make a small band. Your band's going to have 5 to 10 people in it. If you can scrape together 5 to 10 miniatures, and we don't care what they look like or what set they come from, you can play this game. And the rule book is the entire rule book, and this isn't a pamphlet. This is a beautiful, full color art that costs thousands of dollars, real hardback book, right? It is a beautiful, beautiful rule book. It is smaller than other war games, right? So it's only 120 pages long, which I'm extremely excited about, because one of the issues with Warhammer is Warhammer 40K is a wonderful, wonderful game for incredibly dedicated players who are outrageously smart and have a ton of money, right? Now, that is a pretty slim slice, right? I really want to play that game, but I'm having the trouble, scraping up the money to get an army together. And, and if I'm having trouble, that's significant because, I'm not, I have 2 degrees, and I have a good job, so Warhammer is only for the most dedicated players, right? Whereas Frostgrave is like, hey, do you got some buddies who maybe know the words miniature wargaming? Pull them together. We're going to get this rolling, right? And I'm so excited about Frostgrave. I'm at the beginning of my journey with Frostgrave, and so I bought the book last night and I poured through it, and as soon as I got home and took a look at all the templates, took a look at, the world, and most of all, I looked at this section. Now, Frostgrave is a beautiful thing, and it is what it is because of what it is not, right? So Frostgrave is built by Osprey Games. Osprey Games. Now, Osprey is the company, they've been around for a long time, and they don't have very much to do at all with miniatures, right? What they're known for are these beautiful illustrated books about soldiers from different times in history. And so they do these incredible illustrations, and they create really nice books, printed books. That is their wheelhouse, right? So they were masterful when they brought Frostgrave, and Frostgrave looks like a book that was created by a company that has spent decades making beautiful books, right? So that's pretty awesome. But what's really, really interesting is Osprey doesn't really have its own, it's not invested in the miniature side of the hobby, right? They just wanted to put the rules out and let people do, and since they're agnostic to what miniatures you use, it makes their game so flexible, just incredibly flexible, more flexible than any game on the market, right? Because every other Warhammer, every other miniatures wargaming game is bound to a company that's main desire is to sell you miniatures. And the fact that that is not the case with Frostgrave, that they are really very agnostic to what miniatures you use. And it says raw, rules as written. You can play this with 28 millimeter miniatures from whatever series you want. Is mind-boggling. I don't think I've never seen it done in a game that has this level of professional finish and polish. It is really, really something very unique and very special. And so, really, really incredible game, right? So I'm very super psyched about it. Now, what is it? Like, what is Frostgrave? So it is fantasy based. So it is basically a wizard and a war band. That is the structure, right? So you choose a wizard, and the wizard is from one of 10 magic schools, and then you choose a war band, and your war band is soldiers. So you have a wizard, you have an apprentice, and then you have a war band. Everybody who is not a wizard and his or her apprentice is a soldier, right? And you might have, 20 of these soldier miniatures, right? And so it's really, really fascinating, just the structure of how this game flows. And the real heart and soul of Frostgrave is the fact that you could use it with any 28 millimeter miniature scale. So what does that mean, right? What could you actually use this with? Well, you could run it with the Dungeons and Dragons miniatures that were produced for 10 years, right? That you can find in 3 for $1 bins in many LGSs, right? You can run this with HeroClix, minis. You could run this with Warhammer, so Warhammer, not Warhammer 40K, but Warhammer minis. You can run it with War Machine minis. You can, Iron Kingdom minis. You can run it with Hordes minis. You can run it with Shadows of the Deep minis. You can run it with Descent. Descent has a fantastic, beautiful. There are a whole long list of Dungeons and Dragons board games where you could take the mini straight out of that. There's so many games like that you can just fire and forget, man. And what's even cooler is because this game was structured with the idea of we are agnostic to where you get your minis, it unlocks just a world of possibility for not only for an individual player, but for groups of players who have played many miniature games over the years. And now every single one of those silly games that are sitting in a box because somebody's like, I would like, who played Warhammer and said, oh, well, I spent $1,500 on my elf army, and I would really like to play the human army, but, I just had a kid, and so I can't spend another $1,500, and that thing just went into a closet. They can pull out their elves army, and their buddy who has, a human army can pull that out, right? And they can use those minis again. So, Frostgrave is a miniatures war game that unlocks the dozens and dozens of individual miniature war games that have already been out, which are really unplayable, often very unplayable, because of their rules as written. And all these games are like, you gotta use these official minis from Reaper, you have to use these official minis from Citadel, you have to use these official miniatures. And so, and this game is only 1 year old, and people are getting very, very excited about it. That's another thing I was really excited to see, is there's a very robust and what appears to be a very kind community about or surrounding it. So the other thing that I'm really fascinated with Frostgrave is, one, this is mind-blowing. It's a miniatures war game where you spend $25 and you can start playing the next day with the things you can scrape up in your home, or with a chess piece, two chess pieces, and the pieces from a chessboard, and the pieces from a checkers game. It's just crazy how flexible this game is, right? So I'm really, really excited about it, and I think the reason why is I've always really wanted to do miniatures wargaming on the cheap, and I've never really seen a professionally done rule system that allows this, and that's what Frostgrave is. And the reason it could be this is because Osprey Games was not in the business of selling miniatures, which makes Frostgrave truly unique within the industry. Nothing like it, right? So one of the things that's really interesting, so the idea is it takes place in this city called Felstadt, And Felstadt is this major magical city, right? And so this major magical city has its magical heritage, right? Well, somebody did a spell wrong and froze the entire city, right? And it's been frozen for like 300 years or, a few hundred years. And now, after a fell winter, it's gotten very warm, and that magical city is unfreezing. And so the skeletons are there, and the large constructs are there, and the medium constructs are there, and and from the local area, there are wolves and boars, all those things there, that are monsters, right? So that's kind of cool, and that's the concept, is you are wizards going into this frozen city to bring out potions and grimoires and treasure and gold, right? Very cool setup. Very, very cool setup. Excited about that, right? And then also, here's the awesome thing. Because you can just buy Frostgrave, which is 120 pages, the rules are tight, right? So it's a template, and the guy who wrote this, he's clearly a student of many war games. And so what he did was he built this super tight, templated rule system that's super open and flexible. And this is the other thing is, I'm convinced that this guy built this thing and brought it to Osprey and said, hey, I got this thing. You guys want to help me, publish this? And I think it was whole cloth brought to them, right? And the reason why is no miniatures war game company in the world would touch this. Nobody, right? And Osprey that's not their business. Their business is books, right? So this is a bookseller giving you a key to every war game to use, every fantasy